Right now, as I speak, there's a European country which is trying to prevent a superpower from seizing its territory. No, that country is not Ukraine. Sometime in the late 10th century, a Norwegian called Erik Thorvaldsen, also known as Eric the Red due to his hair and beard, fled from his home in Iceland to escape a murder charge after he killed a man in a fight. He took with him his father and a retinue of servants, and together they sailed west until they landed on the coast of what seemed like a vast unknown land. Intending to settle it, Thorvaldsen returned to his native Norway to gather up enough settlers to form a colony. And he persuaded them to join by claiming that the land he had discovered was covered with green, lush fields. In fact, he decided to call it Grönland. It was a lie, of course. It was mostly an ice sheet, but it worked, and the name has stuck. And today we call that land Greenland. The Danes have been associated with Greenland since around the time of Eric the Red, so around the 10th century. And they've been farming it and settling it for hundreds of years. However, in 1814, Greenland formally became part of the Kingdom of Denmark. And this is an important point to note. Greenland is not a colony of Denmark. It is a part of Denmark. Denmark actually has three components: the mainland, Denmark itself, the Faroe Islands, and Greenland. Greenland is as much a part of Denmark as Alaska is a part of the USA. Furthermore, Greenland has been a part of Denmark for a lot longer than Alaska has been part of the USA. And geographically, Greenland actually forms 98% of Danish territory. During Donald Trump's first term, 2016 to 2020, actually technically it's 2017 to 2021, he did raise the issue of Greenland, and everybody kind of laughed at him. What is he talking about? But he indicated that he felt that Greenland would be better off being part of the USA or under American control than under Danish control. And nobody really paid much attention to this. Donald Trump, during his first term, was very naive about how American government worked, and he was surrounded by bitter opponents who pretty much blocked him from doing anything he wanted to do. However, Donald Trump 2025 is a very different animal. He's surrounded by allies, and that means he gets to do whatever he wants to do. And what he wants to do is to take over Greenland from Denmark, and he's not asking nicely. But why? Why is Donald Trump so focused on this ice sheet, this huge ice sheet in the North Atlantic? Well, there are a couple of quite compelling reasons. And if we look at a map of the Northern Hemisphere, the picture becomes clearer. Okay, here's a fairly detailed picture of the Northern Hemisphere from a bird's eye view over the North Pole. And if you can see here what the problem is for Donald Trump, it's the Arctic, which is likely or possibly the next big confrontation ground with Russia. And you only have to look at the number of naval bases that Russia has built along the Arctic corridor here. And you can see that here is Greenland. Here, of course, is northern Canada. So, what's Donald Trump thinking? Well, Donald Trump is thinking that maybe at some point the Russians might spread their wings as far as Greenland. And even if they don't, if he wants to confront or stop Russia expanding in the Arctic, he's going to need that Greenland ice cap. And that's why Donald Trump seems determined to claim it for the USA. He openly says it's for our security. Donald Trump has backed up his otherwise spurious claim by pointing out that Denmark has a few problems when it comes to Greenland, and they're not small problems. First of all, Greenland is a treasure trove of mineral resources: oil, gas, manganese, you name it. Of course, that's another reason why Donald Trump wants it. But he's pointed out that Denmark simply doesn't have the money to exploit these resources, to get them out of the ground, which is especially difficult when most of the country is an ice sheet. And he is actually right about that. Secondly, he's also pointed out that Denmark can't defend Greenland. If the Russians were to make an incursion, what would the Danes do about it? And this is especially true, bearing in mind that the Danes sent all their artillery to Ukraine, where presumably it's now been destroyed or rusting in a field. In any event, they're not getting it back. So, what would the Danes use? Husky dogs, snowballs, sledges. Their options are very limited. And the other issue for Denmark is that the island has about 45,000 residents. Most of them are Inuit, and they're nearly all, most of them are welfare dependents. So they're really just a drain on the Danish economy. And all of that may be true, but nonetheless, the Danes responded to this in a spirited fashion.
President Trump, listen very carefully. Greenland has been part of the Danish kingdom for 800 years. It's an integrated part of our country. It is not for sale. Let me put it in words you might understand. Mr. Trump, off.
There we are, a bit of Viking spirit peppered with some choice Anglo Saxon. But the trouble is, Donald Trump is a man who's probably been told to bleep off many times in his life, and it's unlikely to deter him. Indeed, it didn't deter him, not even to the smallest degree. Things got worse. This is part of a report from Yahoo News dated 24th of January, and it reads really badly. I mean, not badly written, but it reads quite shockingly. Trump reportedly doubled down on his threat to seize Greenland in a phone call with Denmark's prime minister, sending the country's government into a panic. Trump spoke to Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen on the phone for about 45 minutes last week. While neither leader has commented specifically on the call, officials close to the situation said it went poorly, as reported by the Financial Times. They stated that Trump was aggressive and confrontational on the call. It was horrendous, one official said. He was very firm, added another. It was a cold shower. Before, it was hard to take seriously, but I do think it is serious and potentially very dangerous. The intent was clear. They want it. The Danes are now in crisis mode, another official told the publication. The Danes are utterly freaked out by this. It was a very tough conversation. He threatened specific measures against Denmark, such as targeted tariffs, said a former Danish official. That kind of language between two governments who are supposed to be allies and friends is, I won't say unprecedented because I can't say for sure that it's never happened before, but extremely unusual, extraordinary, if the report is accurate, of course. So after that traumatic phone beating from Donald Trump, Mette Frederiksen flew to Brussels and then Paris and then Berlin, presumably to try and drum up some support. And the EU responded right out of the gate with righteous fury and indignation. This is an excerpt from Euronews, which bills itself as being independent media, but it's not. It's the house magazine for Brussels. And this came out on the 29th of January. In an exclusive interview with Euronews on Wednesday, European Council President Antonio Costa said the territorial integrity of Denmark is an essential issue for the European Union. Blah, blah, blah. The European Union gives full support to Denmark against Donald Trump's threat to take control of Greenland and stands ready to defend the principles of national sovereignty and territorial integrity as it did when Russia launched the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Antonio Costa told Euronews in a wide-ranging interview. It is these fundamental principles that lead us to support Ukraine. It is these fundamental principles that lead us to condemn the violations of the border in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The President of the European Council said, we must not stop defending these principles when the territorial integrity of a member state of the European Union is at stake, he added. I'm sorry about breaking out into laughter there, but it really was blah, 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 principles, territorial integrity. Oh, and by the way, Denmark, you're no more important to us than the Congo. In other words, the EU is not going to do anything, and Denmark is on its own. But what does that say about NATO and the European Union? What happens when one NATO country, the most powerful, demands the territory of another NATO country? There's nothing in the NATO treaty about that. And what use is the European Union if Denmark's fellow EU members won't properly and resolutely stick up for Denmark against the USA, which is not a member of the European Union? Doesn't say much for the loyalty between the members of the club, does it? Is this really the beginning of the end of these two pillars of the post-war managerial world? Well, it may be too early to say, but it certainly seems to me damaging. There are some people who think that Trump will not actually go through with this, that what he's trying to do here is to actually incite or goose the other NATO countries to increase their defense expenditure, especially in the Arctic. But if he really wanted that, there's easier ways for him to do it. Will Trump go through with this? Well, he does seem serious about it. Will Denmark continue to say no? In that case, will Trump launch a military invasion of Greenland? It's unlikely that he'll have to go to those lengths, and Denmark couldn't do anything about it if he did, which is why he won't need to. No, Denmark will be browbeaten, strong-armed, bullied into signing over Greenland, which will become an American territory. In return, they'll probably get some trade concessions, maybe some money, maybe a share of the mineral wealth once it's been brought to the surface and brought to the market. After all, Trump is Mr. Art of the Deal. He'll give them something. But in the absence of support, really meaningful support from the European Union, there doesn't seem a lot that the Danish can do about it, except for one thing. They could ask the Russians for help. Thank you for joining us on this video. Please remember to hit the notification bell and please subscribe so that you can join us again when we upload our next video. In the meantime, I wish you a good night.